Since this is the only episode that we'll have you on, well, maybe we'll have you on another one.
Maybe I'll be invited back. Was I a good guest?
Yeah, I think you were an okay guest.
Okay.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
You don't have to worry if you have something in your teeth because it's audio. Unless they can hear something in your teeth, you're good to go. You hear some other voices here with me today, and that is because I'm about to introduce a brand new segment on the Zero to Travel podcast, something we've never done before that I'm super excited about. This segment's called Remote Roundup. Each month, you're going to get a highly curated list of the latest and greatest from the world of remote work and long-term travel, including some insanely helpful tools and resources, need-to-know trends, destinations worth spending time in, plenty of insight into what it really means to live and work around the world. And we do it all with a dose of humor, at least we try. And what makes this different is that I'm tapping two current nomads who are out on the road doing it. I was nomadic for over a decade, but that was a long time ago. A lot of things that have changed. So I want some fresh voices here on the pod to give us the skinny of, what is exactly going on. And I have two here who have been out on the road now for a combined total of almost 8 years. And I didn't have to look far for these very special guest hosts for this segment because they're part of the Zero to Travel team. I've got Caitlin, our associate producer, and Janessa, our partnerships manager. And she also does some production on the podcast as well. And, we practice what we preach here. I mean, they're living the life. So I want you guys to you've been on the show before. I want you to just introduce yourselves really quickly. And then we're going to get into this first episode, which you've prepped. And I am super excited about. So welcome back to the Zero to Travel podcast. And congratulations on your new ongoing co-hosting duty.
Woohoo! I am super excited to be here, Jason. Yeah, so like you said, I'm the associate producer of the podcast for about 2.5 years now, almost 3.
Something like that.
Yeah. And I've been a digital nomad for just over a year now, but I've been traveling pretty consistently since about 2017. And I love to help people do life differently. Fun fact about me is that I am a certified cob builder. So I can build you a mud house.
Nice.
And I am Janessa, the partnerships manager at Zero to Travel. So I'm a slow traveler while working remotely. I started with an adult gap year 6 years ago and never returned to a conventional life. So we're in good company here. And fun fact about me is that I used to travel around North America with a triathlon bike.
I love that. And you'll be hearing some fun facts from Caitlin and Janessa. It's like a nice personal touch. I'll share one about me. I am allergic to turtles. Did you know that?
Turtles?
Yeah, turtles. At least I used to be.
Like if you touch
My dad
them?
brought home... Yeah, my dad brought home a turtle once. He found it on the side of the road and he felt bad for it. And he put it in a box and brought it home. And I had all these crazy allergic reactions. And so he had to take the turtle and bring it back to the woods. So I could still be allergic to turtles. I'm going with that one as my fun fact for this week. And, I love that you guys, Caitlin, you're pretty fresh in your journey, but still in it. And Janessa, you've been out on the road for a while, a bit more slow traveling. Caitlin's been moving around a bit quicker, and you guys kind of go back and forth with that. And I think both of your perspectives together, I've really appreciated. I've had you guesting on the newsletter pretty recently. If you're signed up for that over at zerototravel.com/newsletter, by the way, that's free. You can sign up. You guys done some guest posts, and I enjoy reading the newsletters just as a fan of you both. And I just thought, well, you're out there doing this. You're living this lifestyle right now. You're going to a lot of the events, meeting a lot of the fellow nomads of all ages, long-term travelers, not necessarily people that are just running businesses on the road and doing the digital nomad thing, but people working remotely for other companies, people that are just taking time off and traveling for months and months. You guys are out there on the road right now. And that means you are privy to some of the trends and the things that are happening. And I think that the goal with this episode, as we dive into our first one, Remote Roundup here, is to give you a bit of insight on the scene, but also I think that some of the takeaways are going to apply for anybody, whether you're out on the road for a long time or you're maybe just planning shorter trip, or you're just a, quote unquote regular traveler traveling a few weeks out of the year. You're still going to get a lot around travel destinations and things like that. So what do we have? You guys have prepped this show. I have no idea what we're talking about. I have a little outline here you shared. I think one of the fun things is, for me, I don't really know what's coming. So let us know what's coming our way in this month's Remote Roundup, the very first one.
If you've been reading the newsletters, you'll know that Caitlin and I actually met for the first time in person a couple months ago in Bansko, Bulgaria, which was very cool to brainstorm some of these projects together in person after working together for almost 2 years. So to kick it off today, coming your way is we've got some strategies to overcome burnout and overwhelm. We have a surprising new nomad destination that you may not have thought of before. We are talking about the evolution of the digital nomad 2.0 and when it's time for a home base. And we're turning the tables on Jason for a fun twist that you haven't heard before on the podcast.
No.
Yes.
No. Okay, fine. I know there's going to be a mystery category with this, which I think is a fun format. But I didn't know you were going to make me a part of that on this one. So by the way, I should mention, since I am here, we're introducing the episode and the format and everything that's coming your way, but you guys will be the ones hosting this. I won't be here for these every week, but I'll be here as a fan and a listener. So those teasers got me excited. Where do you want to start? Who's kicking it off?
So we've got 5 categories this week, plus a bonus category at the end. So stick around. We will kick it off with where in the world, a destination that we'd like to highlight. So Caitlin, how about you tell us where you are right now?
Yeah. So I am currently in, I'm gonna mess up how to pronounce this, Sarajevo, Bosnia. And I have been here for about a month now. Surprisingly, I didn't expect to be here for so long. I came here last month for the Bosnia Nomad Fest. I haven't left. I became really good friends with one of the other women at the event. So now we're renting an apartment here for a total of about 800 BAM a month, which is about 400 euros. So it's really affordable, and it's outside of the Schengen zone, which we like. So I'm saving some of my Schengen days to go to Berlin in a few weeks. I think it's a very underrated destination. If you need to get out of Schengen, I highly recommend checking it out.
Janessa, are you sharing your current destination?
I am actually taking a bit of a break, and I am visiting family. So I'm back in my hometown of Winnipeg in Canada. So I'll be back with some more exciting destinations next time.
Well, I mean, that's an exciting destination to me because I haven't been there. Now, Caitlin, I think it's cool that when you end up in a place that you didn't expect to end up, and now you've been there for a month, I don't know, life's just crazy like that. You never thought you would live in Sarajevo, Bosnia for a day, let alone a month. I'm sure.
Right. And I'm actually, I'm going to Berlin for 2 weeks, and then I plan to actually come back here for the second half of September. And then maybe I'll stay longer. I haven't gotten a chance to, get out into the mountains or anything yet. It is absolutely gorgeous here. The history is really fascinating. I didn't know what to expect when I came here. And actually, one thing that I don't think I ever learned about in history class was the Bosnian-Serbian War that happened here in the 90s. It's really quite fascinating kind of walking around the city and seeing the remnants of the war. They've really done an amazing job, sadly, but kind of preserving what happened. You walk around and you see all of the buildings, all the bullet holes from the war. You see the markings from where grenades were dropped. There's this tunnel called the Freedom Tunnel, which is how they, I think, got kind of food into the city when they were basically being starved out. So it's an incredibly fascinating place, especially if you like traveling to places that have, less known history.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's exactly on the radar either, although in the nomad and long-term travel community a little bit, but I've heard good things. And you mentioned the Schengen before. For people that aren't familiar, that's the rule generally applying to Americans. Is it the same for Canadians, Janessa?
Yeah, it is the same for Canadians of 90 days out of 180. And now with Brexit, the UK also has to follow the same rules.
Yeah. So you can spend 90 days every 180 days in the Schengen countries of Europe. And so what Caitlin was alluding to is that if you're traveling long term and you use up those days, you need to get out of there and wait to refresh it, so to speak. And there are some other, I'd say, destinations, I wouldn't call them fringe destinations, but fringe geographically, where they're sort of right outside the Schengen, can be really appealing to visit and spend some time in their own right, but then has the dual benefit of giving you the refresh on the visa so you can come back if you want to spend more time in Western Europe. I just wanted to clarify that in case people were hearing that for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And now with Bulgaria and Romania have recently joined the Schengen, those were popular places to spend some time without using your Schengen days. So nomads are going a little bit further now. So Bosnia, you've definitely bumped it up on my list, Caitlin. I've spent time in Albania, some other popular ones like Turkey, Georgia. So people are getting a little bit more creative and off the beaten path to avoid those Schengen days.
Maybe the first Zero to Travel team retreat. Who knows?
Ooh.
Love it. Janessa, before we move on, just tell us something cool about Winnipeg, because we might want to visit one day.
Absolutely. If people have been here before, I usually ask if they've driven across the entire country of Canada, because then you do have to stop here. Otherwise, people tend to visit if they have family or friends, but I would say it's a little bit underrated. I give it a little bit more love than I used to now that I've been traveling the world for so many years. So it geographically is right in the center of Canada, about an hour drive north of the US border. And we are big on cabin culture here. So we've got beautiful lakes and forests, no mountains, but we love to spend our weekends in the summer, especially going out to the lakes. That's where I'm going to be this weekend with my family. So that's one of the highlights of coming back here in the summer, is the weather is actually usually quite nice. And we have gorgeous lakes and forests to spend time in nature.
I could have supplemented Norway for a lot of what you said. Huge cabin culture here, a lot of beautiful forest, lakes, and the like. So that's awesome to hear. All right, where are we going next in terms of the segments you laid out today?
So the next segment that we have dubbed Tool Time. We'll be sharing remote work life tools worth trying. And for this one, I have more of a productivity and focus technique that I am experimenting with.
Okay. Tell us about it.
I will. So I have been incredibly inspired the last few months. I am coming up with all of these ideas and all of these new products that I want to create and communities that I want to build, etc. And then I have all of my quote unquote real work that I also need to get done.
Are you referring to this podcast?
Maybe.
I hate it when that happens.
I know. I hate it when I have to work. But so I am experimenting with something that's called deep work, which has been made pretty well known through, I believe it's Cal Newport, his book, Deep Work, and then also the concept of energy management. So essentially for the next quarter, I'm experimenting with, what would it look like if I kind of set out, we've all heard of, most people have heard of the Pomodoro technique, which is you work for an hour on, take a 10-minute break, etc. So basically I'm planning on creating 4 different containers, 4 hour-long containers of work each day with time for breaks and intentional breaks in between. That's something that I struggle with, and I have heard a lot of nomads also struggle with as well. So I'm focusing on that, and also paying attention to how I feel. Like, when am I more energized to actually, do the most important work, and kind of just scheduling my day based on that. And also this idea of instead of adding on more things for me to do is taking things away, which sounds kind of counterproductive. I have all these projects that I want to do, and instead I'm focusing on the most important. Looking at the 80-20 rule. What's the 20% of my work that gets done, or that I get 80% of the results from, and just really trying to kind of reprioritize my life, especially as a nomad. I have all of that FOMO. I want to go out into the mountains. I want to go meet up with the expat and digital nomad groups, and I seem to always be working. I'm always working. So that is what I'm experimenting with this next quarter.
I love that. You've been sharing more of that online. And so it's cool to see you enacting some of these techniques. I think that's something a lot of us struggle with, especially those of us that are not employed by a company that watches to make sure we're on Slack at certain hours of the day. We have a lot of flexibility, but with that comes, like you said, the FOMO, because there's always something better to be doing than working. And so I've also been playing around with different time management techniques to try to kind of not quite the 4-hour blocks, but definitely time blocking my day, but also scheduling in other activities like going for a walk in the middle of my day to reset. So I don't have as structured of an experiment as you have, but I'm really looking forward to following where you go with this over the next few months and seeing if these techniques for deep work and energy management help with your productivity and your well-being as well overall, because that's so important.
What does the energy management portion look like?
So that is more like figuring out when are you actually most productive? When do you feel most inspired? So for me, I work the best in the morning. Some people, so they say, supposedly people with ADHD, it's better to actually do your work that's most rewarding first, or do the activities that are most rewarding, and then that will motivate you to maybe get the more quote unquote boring work done. For other people, it might be, you have more energy in the morning. So that's when you want to focus on the bigger projects, and then you reward yourself with the fun thing later. It is also checking in with yourself maybe during these breaks. For me, I'm trying to get more into kind of like that meditative state a little bit and checking in with myself and seeing how I feel. Do I need a nap? Am I tired? Did I forget to eat because I was so focused? I should probably go eat. I should probably drink some water because I'm dehydrated. Yeah, your physical energy, but also kind of like your workflow and how that works for you optimally.
Yeah. You got to make time for fake energy too, in coffee and, things like that. That's mostly how I power through the days. A lot of fake energy, and it keeps me going. The takeaway for me, that if people are listening and they're like maybe wanting to try that, maybe that's not the thing that is resonating with them, or those concepts, which, to each their own. But I think that the idea of experimenting and instead of just going along with, how you're living your days at work. And I mean, this is for everybody working from home, or if you don't have to be on the road for this type of thinking, is to just, hey, let me experiment with the way I do things and just see how I feel at the end of the month. Let me do this for a month or even a week. And is there an approach that would actually make me more productive and working with less time investment in terms of the work, or just make me feel better? A lot of it's reframing. I found I had to go out and pick some blueberries the other day because I'm just like, I just need to get out and pick blueberries. I haven't picked any blueberries all year. And that's the thing that I needed. And I needed to have that space, and that space fuels the creative work later. I know it does. But if I don't look at it in that way, if I look at it like, well, I don't have time to go pick blueberries because I have all these things to do, I'd be missing an opportunity to open up for creativity. And I have to remind myself that things like going for a walk or self-care type of things, they serve a purpose that's just harder to identify in many ways.
It sounds so counterintuitive. Like, oh, if I go take a break and pick those blueberries, and I'm not going to hit this deadline because now I'm quote unquote wasting time on doing these things. But actually you find somehow that it inspires you more. It, like you said, it opens you up to more creative ideas and somehow gives you that energy to actually get things done. And then another point, like you said, with the experimenting, it's also, committing to an experiment and actually giving it some time to see what those results actually are. A lot of times I give up on my experiments too quick. I go, oh, this isn't working. And then I just go back to whatever it is that I was doing, which is why I decided that, kind of for the next 3 months, for a whole quarter, is I'm going to sort of change how I work and how I kind of operate on a daily basis and see. And, maybe I'll go back to no naps and over caffeinating if this doesn't work. But yeah, it's worth the try.
And Janessa, you're charging your battery just, I'm sure, with being around family and just taking that time to be present with loved ones, which is another hugely important thing in life we have to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to kind of take slower phases to slow down. I talked about this a little bit in the newsletter a couple of weeks ago, that it's just a very different pace than when I'm on the road. Even though I am traveling slower and spending longer in destinations, there's always something to do, right? And you kind of don't have that same mentality at home. And there's, always people to catch up with. So I think it's good to have different phases. And right now I'm actually in a bit of a heavier work phase, and I'm spending more time working than I would have liked, even though I'm with family. But I know that that'll kind of smooth itself out again in a few weeks.
Well, I don't know about you, but you can only take so much family. So maybe that's why you're working a little bit extra now.
I'm very lucky. I have a family to come back to and spend time with. I know not everyone is able to do that. So
I know. I'm kidding.
Actually, I was going to say, I'm actually currently recording this from my childhood bedroom.
Yeah. Oh, nice. This podcast started in not my childhood bedroom, but I was visiting my mom, and I think I recorded the first episode in her spare bedroom, which is funny. There's something about small bedrooms in podcasts. I'm sure most of them are recorded, at least the beginning stages.
Well, the sound here is great.
Yes. I know when my kids pick blueberries because they come back with what I call Smurf mouth. They just have blue mouths. It's like they were either freezing or they just ate a bunch of blueberries. Okay. Tool time's a cool segment. I like that because I think that when you guys share those over the coming episodes, they're going to be different things that, perhaps could be useful regardless of whether you're traveling or not. But the next one serves all travelers as well, I think. What's trending in the nomad world, trends to know, which can include, of course, destinations and other travel related goodies. So Janessa, you want to kick this one off? Tell me a little bit more about the idea for this segment and what you're going to share today.
Sure. So the trends to know, we want to keep up to date of what's going on in the nomad and remote work and travel space. As you mentioned, both of us are typically out on the road interacting with other nomads. So what we're going to bring you today, though, is our predictions on the next digital nomad hotspots. So we've each chosen a destination that we will briefly highlight. I know we could go on and on about destinations. So if you like this segment, let us know if you have other destinations that you would like us to highlight or look into, or that you think might be the next digital nomad hotspot. Send us a message. So, Caitlin, do you want to start with the first highlight?
Yeah. So my prediction on the next digital nomad hotspot is actually Japan as a country.
I just got this in the mail.
There you go.
No way.
Just today. I'm holding up a Moon Japan guidebook. Yeah. Japan. Really?
Japan.
Tell me more.
Yes. I really chose this based on not maybe my personal idea, but everyone that I've been hanging around, all I hear is Japan, Japan, Japan. I went there in 8th grade and I love it. So I am dying to go back. But, at a lot of these nomad events that I'm attending, there's so many people talking about Japan, and there are so many pushes between, digital nomads working with the local governments to create digital nomad events to try to kind of get the word out about, the benefits of going to Japan as a digital nomad. It started with co-living Fukuoka. So Fukuoka, Japan is the biggest one, digital nomad event. In Hiroshima, they're having a digital nomad event. And there's at least 2 other cities in Japan who are also holding these digital nomad events to try to get more people to stay. And so really just Japan. I think we're all going to wind up in Japan. Maybe not this year, but I think definitely into 2026. I think that's going to blow up.
Yeah, I have not been to Japan yet either, but I agree with what Caitlin's saying. We were both at the Bansko Nomad Fest, and there was a large contingent from Japan to tell us all about why we should come check it out. So it's definitely been added to my list. And the destination that I think is, well, I almost didn't put it on this list because I didn't think it was up and coming. I thought it's already there. But then once I've been talking to others, maybe it's still a little bit not on everyone's radar. And this is Cape Town, South Africa. So it was named Time Out's best city in the world in 2025. I recently spent 3 months hanging out in Cape Town, and it is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever spent time in. and it is European time zones, which is nice. And you don't have to deal with Schengen. You don't have to deal with winter because their summer is our winter. So between November and March is a very popular time to go. I will be going for 3 months again at the start of the new year. And they also have a Nomad event. So Nomad Week Cape Town, I attended last year, was the first ever. And for a first time event, they did a very good job. So I've actually just bought my pre-sale ticket for next year. I don't know if it's publicly available yet, but I had a great time in Cape Town. There's a really vibrant community there. And I get a lot of questions about the safety there. That's kind of the first thing if people have been considering it, but they haven't decided to try it out themselves yet. And there's kind of just certain common sense rules you have to follow there, like a lot of other places in the world. But for the most part, it wasn't nearly as big of a concern as some people kind of hyped it up to be. I felt quite safe most of my time there, staying in certain areas and just not walking certain places at night by yourself, which, to be honest, I wouldn't do in downtown Winnipeg either. So I really, really enjoyed Cape Town. I would think it's already popular, but I just see it becoming more and more.
Yeah, good point on the safety. If you wouldn't do it at home as well, it's just, I guess, every place has its things to be aware of for sure. And I should point out that you're both solo female travelers. So, the destinations through that lens as well as you run through these segments over the coming months. Japan and Cape Town. Love it. Okay. They're on my list.
All right, so we'll move on from these destinations. So next segment we've called Real Talk. So we don't want to get too into it, but quick little insight we've had lately, or a lesson we've learned, or just kind of an honest take on nomad life that we have experienced. So this is less about the headlines and more about our experiences that maybe we've shared with others that people don't necessarily talk about all the time. So, we want to get real with you guys. So let us know if you agree. And what we kind of wanted to talk about today is the evolution of digital nomad 2.0 life and having a home base or having multiple home bases or otherwise ways to kind of beat the travel burnout and make this lifestyle more sustainable. And Caitlin and I have been talking about this recently. So do you want to share your thoughts first?
Yeah. So, we both had similar ideas for this real talk, and mine, in general was this concept of, is the next level of digital nomadism having those bases, either one base, multiple base, and kind of the strategy around that. You keep one in Europe, you have one in Asia, you kind of cover all your bases, all your seasons. Because as someone who's only been traveling for, less than a year and a half, I am 1000% already feeling that burnout. I don't know how people who have been traveling for 5-10 years without a base continue to do it. It's incredible. I expected not to have as much of a hard time as I am. Finding a base is something that I have been starting to consider. When I landed in Chiang Mai last year, one of the first things that I did was actually go on like the real estate websites and start saying, oh, how much would it be to get an apartment here in Chiang Mai? Oh, only, $40K? Great. Okay. There's this, I guess, expectation or this like stereotype of like, well, if I get a home base, am I still a nomad? Like, what does that mean? So that's been kind of, that used to kind of stop me from the idea of maybe having a home base. But now I'm getting more excited about it. And I think I'm going to start exploring that more personally in the next year.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me. And I think that is common. People seem to hit around the 2.5 year mark, I've heard, and they start thinking about having a base. I have been fully nomadic for about 3 years. We mentioned at the top that I left home about 6.5 years ago, but for the first few years, I was living and working abroad. So even slower travel of staying in a place for a year or more outside of my home country. But I've had, no permanent lease of any kind for about 3 years now. And I actually don't feel the need to have a base anytime soon, but I do see myself having multiple home bases in the future. And to me, this might not necessarily mean buying an apartment somewhere, but just having places that I return to on a kind of rotational, seasonal basis. So maybe I'm just renting a place every winter. And I kind of find myself slowing down into this pattern already of, I mentioned in the newsletter this week, returning to some of my favorite places and not having as much of a desire to explore new places. Those will still be sprinkled in here and there. There's always a list, but I know often, you show up in a new destination, go, I could live here. But I don't think there's anywhere I would want to live 12 months of the year and only travel from that base. I think that doesn't quite exist in the world for me at the moment. At least I haven't found it. So I like about 3 months in a place. So I'm already naturally finding myself returning to the same places seasonally in favor of exploring new ones. So I think that's my way of kind of making this a little bit more sustainable and avoiding that burnout that seems to happen from quickly jumping around and always having the new. There's something comforting about showing up in a city and already knowing how to take the public transportation and knowing where to get your groceries and having a favorite supermarket and not having to figure out the currency and the language every single time. So that's my version of my 2.0 is the slowing down.
Yeah, the familiarity aspect is the way that a nomad can kind of instantly feel at home. We're like, oh yeah, I'm back at my favorite grocery store. It's a place maybe you spent, you shop there over like a 1-3 month period, but you feel you need to have something where you feel like a regular or something, like a regular person.
Yeah, because we are still living our lives. We're not on vacation all the time, as much as it might seem like we are. We still need to fit in the regular life logistics of taking care of ourselves while we're working. So I really urge anyone, if you're starting to feel that burnout and thinking maybe this isn't for me, or maybe it's time to go home, maybe just return to your favorite spot and hang out for 3 months and see how you feel. Maybe you have a new base, maybe you're done with that destination, but it all kind of is an experiment, right?
Yeah. I remember also one thing you said before we move on. We have 2 more categories. I'm scared. I'm just trying to stall for this mystery thing. You guys are turning the tables on me. The identity portion, which is maybe something that Caitlin alluded to, the idea that, well, am I still a nomad if I get a home base? I went through this for myself once I settle down, I'm never going to be able to travel again. I'm going to be trapped and, I'm going to have all these bills and I'm just going to be back in a regular life situation and blah, blah, blah. And I was very afraid to let go of the nomadic travel identity, not because I needed to see myself that way, but because I was afraid to lose my freedom. And my perception of freedom was the road. And then I had to reframe everything and understand that if I do it right, and I get a home base in a way that allowed me to still feel free. And for me, that was making sure if I bought a condo, which I did in Colorado, first of all, I wanted to go to a place I love. Secondly, if I was going to buy a place, I wanted it to be legal within that homeowners association that I could rent it out. And then I wanted to have storage in the garage so I could put everything there. So I wanted to leave. So like I set it up in a way where I'm like, okay, I can do this because I know I can leave at any time. Like I needed to set it up in a way where I knew I could leave at any time. And that's how I was able to make the transition. That sort of thing is different for everybody, right? Some people just must be like, I'm done with the road. Like it's enough. I just want to, go to the same drawer and get the same utensils every day or whatever, but that's how it was for me. So, that's where the lifestyle design portion comes in, and you're at this point where you might want to settle down. You're considering these different things. As long as you're putting it through the lifestyle design lens and you do it in a way that you feel like you're still aligned with your values, then I don't really think you're losing anything. In fact, you're gaining, but sometimes it takes like tricking your own mind to get to that point.
I think we talk so often about transitioning to this travel lifestyle, and then we kind of skip the part of you're there, you're doing it, you're doing what you dreamed of doing. And now what? Is this what you want to do forever at this pace? And so we don't have to talk about that transition back to a semi-nomadic life or a different type of freedom-based lifestyle.
There's no one size fits all to it, right? That's kind of what you realize too. Once you start going to these events or going into these communities and meeting all these different people, there's so many different ways of doing that. So it's all about just finding what works for you. You don't have to try to fit yourself into this specific box, which I think there's a lot of pressure to when you first start traveling. You try to put all these goals around what we know of what you want to accomplish as a digital nomad or what it needs to look like. But yeah, you have people who just travel a few times a year and consider themselves a nomad. I've met people who they consider themselves travelers, but I would consider themselves a digital nomad. So it's really interesting. But yeah, I think it's just a really important thing to remember that you don't have to try to fit yourself into a specific category or a specific identity when you're kind of creating your life like this.
Yeah, and it's all your perception, right? Like what you just said illustrates the point that you might see yourself one way and somebody sees you in a completely different way, which is that just how the world is, and that's totally okay. But I just wanted to bring up the identity portion because sometimes people that can be like an underlying thing that's preventing change that you want, and so it's just good to maybe bring that up to the level of awareness within your conscious and think, ask yourself, is this like an identity thing? Am I having an identity crisis? Which, by the way, I always wanted to have a hardcore punk band named Identity Crisis. Maybe there is one out there. I thought it was a good name for a punk band back in the day. Never did it.
That's a great name.
I thought so. Maybe it must be some punk band somewhere.
It's not too late, Jason.
Okay. Identity Crisis band members, if you're listening in, let us know. We're not going to infringe on your copyrights. Okay. We've got 2 segments left here. Generally, this is going to be 4 to 5 segments we're thinking, plus this mystery bonus category each month to keep it fun. Again, like before we kind of get into the end here, let us know what you think. You can drop us an email. We're all in my email box, jason@zerototravel.com. You guys are on social media as well, so we can link up to that in the show notes if people want to find you and DM you or whatever. Who's going to give us the next one? Rogue Roundup, we're calling this, according to my notes.
So we've got a bit of a random one here to round us off before the bonus category. So I just found this headline that I thought was very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll just read it out. It was published about a week ago from fortune.com. Starbucks asked customers in South Korea to stop bringing printers and desktop computers into stores as workers transform cafes into remote offices.
Genius. Why didn't I think of that?
So I've never seen anyone bring in printers or desktop computers. But for some reason, I feel like that's a very, something that you would do in South Korea. Like, I think it kind of fits the destination a little bit. But, in general, like on the serious side, right? I mean, there is like a lot of cafes who have issues with all of us kind of cramming into their small spaces and plugging in and taking up every single table and, needing to find all the outlets. And yeah, I know here in Sarajevo, there's a cafe that all the expats go to called Habitus. They've embraced it a little bit. They've made us a separate room for us to work from. And then they have all the other tables kind of labeled with like, no laptop zone. And then we have to buy a coffee. We can stay there for a couple hours. But yeah, I definitely think it's, we need to find a better way to work with our fellow cafes that we love to work from so much.
Nice find, Janessa. I think that I want to give those people props because that's just rock and roll. You come into a cafe, you roll in like with a 2-wheel cart with your desktop computer and your printer and you start setting up. I mean, if anybody's listening, they've done that. First of all, kudos to you. And maybe next time you want to bring up some decorations, you could grab the corner of Starbucks, start hammering in some motivational posters or something. You could really just decorate. That's awesome. All right. Well, I guess we're finally at the bonus category this week. I should be excited for this because I'm acting like you guys are going to blindside me here with some difficult thing. All right. What are you doing? What are we doing here?
All right. So for our mystery bonus category, since this is the only episode that we'll have you on, well, Maybe we'll have you on another one.
Maybe I'll be
We'll
invited
see.
back. Was I a good guest?
Yeah, I think you were an okay guest.
Okay. All right, cool.
But so since we have you on this now, Janessa and I thought it would be fun to do some rapid fire questions for you.
No, I love these.
And our goal is if you can answer these, maybe 1 to 2 sentences so we can see how many that we can get through in the next few minutes. So Janessa, do you want to ask your first question?
Is it possible for me to only answer in 1 to 2 sentences? That's my question.
That's why this is going to be difficult for you.
This is, okay. I'll keep
Yeah.
this concise. Here we go.
Yes.
I'm
It doesn't
ready.
have to be the best or the top. Just first example that comes to mind, rapid fire is the name of the game.
Oh, no.
All right. We'll start you off nice and easy. Just tell us a recent book that you read.
Oh, gosh. I need my Kindle in front of me. The bad thing about my book habits is that I read them and I'm like, that was amazing. And then, I'm on to the next book and I can't remember the last one that I read. I've been getting into graphic novels lately. And I just found a couple that I really liked. I found one, it was called 8 Billion Genies. This was a while ago. And the premise was that everybody in the world gets a genie and gets one wish at the same time. And then, of course, all hell breaks loose. I just thought that was a cool premise. And then that was my first sort of adult graphic novel. I thought, this is really cool. Like the artwork and the stories and everything. And so we were at the library last week with my kids and I picked up a graphic novel and it was called Windows of the World, I believe. And it was about, it was set in Mexico and New York during September 11th. And it was about a Mexican immigrant who had to sneak across the border and was undocumented and came to New York looking for his father, who was working at the Windows in the World restaurant at the top of the Twin Towers. And it was New York right after that time. And it was really a great graphic novel. So I'll just throw that one out there. I have read other regular books, but I can't think of them right now.
Perfect.
All right, Caitlin, you want to go with a question?
Yes. All right, Jason, if you didn't live in Norway, where would you live?
Colorado's my spirit animal home. But if it wasn't in the US, I always thought it might be cool to live in Costa Rica for a bit.
Very cool. All right, that was a little more rapid. We'll keep this going.
Yeah, I know.
If
The other
you-
one wasn't very rapid. I realize that. I'm getting to the class 5 rapids now. That was the class
All
1.
right. If I could download a language into your brain that you would instantly understand and know how to speak, what language would you like to know?
Well, I speak Norwegian. I know it, and I used to know Spanish decently when I was traveling a lot in Spanish-speaking countries. I would like my Spanish back.
Yeah, I would too.
All right. So Jason, what the heck do you do outside of podcasting?
I love to play music. I'm not very good, but I really enjoy it. And I shouldn't say that because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I do play in a band here. The band's called Laundry House. If you want to see us, or hear us, we're on Spotify. We can link up to it. Shameless self-plug. We're actually playing a rock festival in Southern Norway next year. So we're excited about that, booking some gigs. So yeah, I love music and I love hanging with my family and my kids.
Nice. All right. Something that you did to save money in your 20s or 30s that you don't do anymore.
This is a great one. And I know exactly what it is. And it allowed me to do all the things I wanted to do, travel and otherwise. And that was by being a nomadic traveling worker, I was able to save way more money than if I was living a traditional life. And I think that's super powerful for anybody listening that is just assuming I can't afford to travel. I actually look at it the other way. Without the traveling and the working at the same time and the homelessness, the voluntary homelessness, I never would have been able to save as much money as I was able to in a traditional career, saving up eventually, being able to buy a condo and, kind of start my quote unquote regular life. So being nomadic was something that really allowed me to save a lot of money, and working for these companies where they paid your hotel, paid your gas, and not owning a car, basically not owning anything except a suitcase, a backpack, and a guitar, and working on the road for 10 years was the best thing I did in my 20s to save money.
Awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right. On the kind of similar subject line, what's something you do or bring with you now when you travel that your younger self would judge you for?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I have anything like that. Like, oh, I need my fancy pillow. I can't travel without my fancy pillow. Maybe my younger self would be like, come on, dude, you don't need to pack all this stuff. Because I've been overpacking lately, let's face it. Part of that is the unpredictability of the Norwegian weather, and we've been traveling a lot in Norway. But also, I've just been like lazy. Because if we're doing a road trip and have the car, blah, 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 we're just going to throw all this stuff in. So I would say my younger self would probably judge me for the amount I've been packing, which is too much.
That's a good one. I'm also struggling with overpacking right now myself. So
you should have seen my first backpack when I went to Europe the very first time. It was so ridiculous. It was tall. It was like 3 feet above my head. It was stuffed with all this, not that all the gear you want when you're traveling, really. Anyway, you do what you do with what you know at the time.
I'm slowly starting to pack a little more. When I first left Canada and I moved to Germany for what was supposed to be a year, I packed just a carry-on backpack. So not even the overstuffed backpack. It was a super small 45 liter. And I lived out of that for over a year because, spoiler alert, I didn't go home. Now I definitely am still trying to keep it pretty minimal, but it's tough. All right, I've got one more for you and then maybe Caitlin can finish it up. So this was inspired by your recent conversation with Chris Hutchins of All the Hacks. You mentioned that returning to a destination a second time was the best compliment that you could give it. So this doesn't have to be your top one, but what is one destination you're dying to return to for a second time?
Well, can I share two? Because we talked about one today, Japan. I was only there for a handful of days, only around Tokyo. And I'd love to go back. And I spent 3.5 months in Patagonia at one point, mostly in Argentina, some in Chile, and I would love to go back.
Good picks.
All right, I will end this with a more serious question.
Uh-oh.
What are you most proud of in your life?
I have to say my kids. It's not easy to be a parent, raise a family and all that. And of all the traveling and the amazing experiences I've had, it's really been, I know it sounds like cheesy and whatever, it's been the greatest adventure of all. Cue the sad music and the cheesy Adam Sandler, ending to the movie or something. But yeah, I'd say that's what I'm most proud of. And also, doing this podcast for 12 years or whatever it's been now, and being able to have these guests sharing and have this community and starting in the spare bedroom, like I said, it's the longest thing I've done that I've stuck with the longest. So I'm proud of that for myself. And I'm also just super proud of the fact that it's been able to help some people, at least according to some of the emails I've gotten over the years. So
yeah, you should be proud of it. You've built an amazing community here. So thank you for all of your answers, Jason. Hopefully that wasn't too
it was fun.
difficult.
It was
Take
fun.
A little behind the scenes that the listeners don't usually get to hear about you.
I'll have to get back to you on those books, though. Failed on the book one.
Jason's book club.
Let's do it. All right. We've finished this up. I wanted to make, as a part of this, the having you each share one big takeaway from the conversation, because although these types of episodes are sort of sketched out as an outline and then we end up going in all kinds of different directions, that's the point. So we've structured it in a way where you, the listener, will be hopefully getting value out of each of these episodes in the form of some of the stuff we talked about today. But I always think it's fun to just wrap it up with a big takeaway. And sometimes those are surprising. Sometimes you think one thing that it's going to be going into the conversation, it's going to be one thing, and it ends up being something completely different. Do you guys have a takeaway from today you want to share?
I think for me, it goes back to when we were talking about, what does home look like as a digital nomad? But really our identities and creating a nomad life that fits for what you want, and not feeling that, it has to look a certain way and that you don't have to put expectations on it. So kind of back to that concept of lifestyle design, creating a life that feels good for you. And it doesn't matter, what on paper that might look like, or how someone else might perceive that, I think is really important.
Yeah, I love that. I've been thinking about that a lot lately too. I also want to highlight your thoughts on the deep work and your energy management. I think that you provided some cool examples of things that you're doing that maybe I might want to try as well. Experiment with a few things. It doesn't have to be the perfect productivity system, and that sometimes doing less is more, and go for the walk. Always go for the walk.
Yeah, I'll share one too. I think the productivity experiment also, because it's just been a while since I've experimented with any specific productivity type of system. And you mentioned the Pomodoro technique. Even just going back to that, something I've done in the past. The way I did it was you would have 25 minutes and then 3 minutes off or something like that. And then another 25 minutes and then a longer break after that, I think is how I broke it up back when I was doing it. But even just trying that again, maybe doing one or two of those a day in the morning, or maybe one for my first work session, just to see how it goes, see if it gets me in a flow quicker or something like that. We just can get so caught up in not caught up, we don't even know. We just go about our day. You wake up and you just go about your day. And sometimes it's nice to just take a step back and think about, maybe I could be a little more conscious about how I dive into my work today. So thanks for that. If you liked this, hopefully you did, we're going to be doing these one time per month for the rest of the year. And we'll be checking back in with you. Of course, this will be Caitlin and Janessa's rodeo, not mine. But I was honored to be a guest here today to introduce this segment. And yeah, you'll just have to let us know what you think. If there are segments you want Caitlin and Janessa to include and talk about. And yeah, we'll take a look at things and we'll just, try this out over the months, like another experimental type thing here on the pod, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from what you both have going on out there. And, we don't do a lot of online meetings and things like that because, again, we practice what we preach here at the Zero to Travel podcast. We're trying to, enjoy our travels and be flexible with the work and all that. But I love getting these updates and kind of hearing your perspectives and reading about them in the newsletter, which you've been writing, both of you. And I look forward to these episodes you're going to be putting together. So everybody be sure to stay tuned for some actionable takeaways. And, as we always do, we end these shows with a quote. Do you have one you want to share today? Either of you?
I just pulled up a quote.
Okay.
So my quote for today is, "Wanting to be someone else is a waste of who you are." And that is by Kurt Cobain.
Nice. Janessa, feel free to share if you want, or we can end on that one.
I'll share a quote next time.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. By the way, zerototravel.com/newsletter. We mentioned the newsletter if you want more helpful resources like you heard today. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Do you guys have a signature sign out?
Oh, not yet, but now I'm going to have to come up with one for episode number 2.
So long, everybody.
So long. Adios.
Take care.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.